All right, welcome back, friends. Happy Friday. Today is day 5 of KeyShot World 2020. Thank you for joining us. We have one session today at 10. That'll be shortly after I stop talking here. And that's going to wrap up our week of KeyShot World. So had a great week. Thank you all for coming this week. Today's session is Advanced Animation Techniques with Ryan Levy. For those who want to catch up over the weekend, you can go on the webpage. Every session's up there. You can watch them. You can get caught up. Some great ones by George Olarte at Spin Master and Jacob Fine at Pepsi, talking about how they use KeyShot across their entire workflow and across our company. So that's great. Had a great session on animation on Wednesday and on materials yesterday. Materials Essentials with Ryan Levy. Come back on Monday. We're going to have 2 sessions on Monday. So we're coming back for 4 days next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. When I said KeyShot 9 days of KeyShot for KeyShot World, I meant it, nine full days. So Monday is materials advanced. That's going to go through multi-materials. It's going to go through material graph and more advanced editing. The second session is going to go through real cloth. It's going to go through fuzz. It's going to go scan materials. A number of people had questions yesterday about scan materials. So definitely come back on Monday and check out more materials. Tuesday, we're coming back with information on model sets, on studios. We're talking about configurator. That's going to be great. Wednesday is lighting. 2 sessions on Wednesday. First is going to be lighting essentials, then lighting advanced. So it's going to be 2 hours plus of great lighting information. You're going to be a lighting master by the end of it. So mark it down on your calendar. Wednesday, lighting day. As always, follow along on Zoom or our YouTube feed. Some folks were asking yesterday after Jesper's great session on VR, how they can get set up on KeyVR. So if you've got KeyShot and you've got the hardware, HTC Vive, Oculus Rift, Windows Mixed Reality, if you've got KeyShot and you've got the hardware, I cannot recommend enough, give KeyVR a test drive. How do you do that? You contact your sales rep. Give him or her a ring. They will set you up. If you don't know your sales rep, as always, you can go to sales@luxion.com. But yeah, definitely a great time to kind of try that. And like I said, the KeyVR Connect stuff, multi-user support's coming soon. So now's a great time to try that out. Couple other things. People were asking questions. Sometimes you don't have time in the Q&A to kind of get through all the different elements. But it might be too complex of an answer. Reminder, our manual is fantastic. We've been updating our manual since KeyShot 8. It's got a ton of information in there. We're actually inserting the videos in there as well. So definitely check out our forum as well. You can ask questions on our forum. Support teams on the forum, developers on the forum. I'm on the forum. Great power users on the forum. It's a great place to get information. And excuse me, our support portal. New support portal. If you type in the top, you type in fuzz, you type in what you want to know, it'll actually bring up the videos. So if you have a quick tip on it, you'll see that. You'll see a knowledge base article, whatever is out there. So that's a great place to get more information for folks that need it. Render contest. I was going through last night all the submissions that people are putting up there on the Render Weekly Instagram render contest, and you guys are good. You guys are real good. I was loving what I saw, especially the Jurassic Park one. That was really fun. The contest runs through the weekend, so you got all weekend to keep cranking out cool renders. We're going to pick a winner on Monday. They're going to win a free KeyShot license. That's fantastic. We're going to start a new contest next Monday. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I am. It's going to be based on the cloud. So grabbing models from the cloud. So that's going to be really fun. But first, you got to win this one. So render contest going through Monday. Enjoy it. Grab the render ball. Do something fun with it. Another contest starting next week. Speaking of winners, congrats to David H. He won the RTX 5000 yesterday in the session, so congrats to him. Today's awesome giveaway is going to be a 1-week 64-core render farm access from the wonderful folks at 3D Off the Page. So thank you to 3D Off the Page. That's going to be given away at the end of today's Q&A session. I mentioned at the top that Will did a great presentation on Wednesday about animation, kind of going beginning to end, sort of all the different features you can access inside of KeyShot's animation tools. Today, we're going to do a deep dive on some of the things that Will kind of touched upon but didn't go into detail on. So that's going to be how to animate fuzz, the custom curve editor, importing alembic, which I know we kind of briefly touched upon, and geometry nodes. So this is going to be a great way to dig in deeper on animation. And so with that, let's go and do that, okay? This is Advanced Animation Techniques with Ryan Levy. Ryan, take it away.
Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Friday. Thank you, Derek. Today's topic is one that's close to my heart, animation. So just wanted to thank Will again for his great presentation on Wednesday. He covered a lot of good topics. We're going to dive into a little bit more today, including some pre-production techniques too that might help you out. So let's move forward a little bit here. Let me see if this works. Let me just bump this up again. Okay, so moving on, my name is Ryan Levy. Again, just wanted to introduce myself, global training and creative specialist here at Luxion. Here's some of my contact info, including my Instagram. My background is pretty robust. I have a lot of experience in motion graphics and videography, touching up on a little bit of visual effects and 3D viz. Today's topics, there's really four main topics. So we'll look at exploded views and copying and pasting those custom animations and also grouping them together in folders, kind of help clean up that timeline for you. We're looking at the curve graph a little bit deeper. I know Will touched on it a little bit. There's some really great features in there that might be able to help speed up some stuff for you. We're going to look at animation nodes that are in the material graph. These are really powerful, a lot of fun to use. We'll try to cover a few of those effects with those nodes, but with the time we have today, we probably won't be able to touch up on all of those effects, but we'll hopefully get some good questions coming through with those too. And we'll look at alembic files for deformation animations. I'll just show you a few of those as well and how to bring those in. So I'm going to run through a few just sample animations that I put together for this presentation. This is, we're just going to cover some things that this includes, such as curve editor for easing, and also copying pasting animations to help speed that up. Here's an example of alembic animation. This was created in, what did I do this in? Cinema 4D, I think, and then exported out that ABC file. This is a pretty simple simulation. However, take note that it's really easy to just apply our materials to these animations as well. So we'll look at that too. And I think I have supplied this particular ABC file, alembic file, that you can download and use along with me. Here's an example of fuzz growing with the curve node. We'll look at that first today, how to achieve that. Here's an example of an alembic file again. This is just a water simulation, and then all rendered into KeyShot. So it just makes everything super quick and easy. Yeah, we'll look at this too. You might have seen this in the intro video. This is just using more curve graph editing for smooth movements, and also copying and pasting animations. So that's how that was put together there. My past is in power tools. A lot of years in that industry, and I was a shooter. I shot for them, for DeWalt, and did a lot of the animations for videos as well. So what you'll see here, sorry, this is a really old example, but I did some compositing with KeyShot animation for that motor to really be visible through that housing. So KeyShot can really, I mean, you can take it in more areas than most people think. I mean, it can be used, compositing into video as well. Will touched on this. You got a question on this on Wednesday, but I just wanted to really emphasize storyboarding and how important it is, specifically for client work, or if you're working, with a, within a business, and you're trying to sell an idea. So what I'm doing here is basically, if you have a model and it might not be finished, it might just be the basic shape or some ideated, just concepts or something like that, you can use, what I do is I use that model. I apply like a clay texture to it before I do any kind of texturing or coloring, to really sell this idea in. So I recommend storyboarding as much as possible, because you don't want to have to go back and have to re-render animations or anything like that. You want to sell that idea in first. So that's something you'll want to think about. All right, so let's jump into our demo. So the first thing we're going to look at is growing fuzz. This model I didn't provide. However, Derek mentioned earlier that Render Weekly is doing a really cool contest with us using this material sphere. So you can go to their site to download this, I believe. So if you want to follow along with this, that's cool. Or try another model in our material library, and you can work along with me there. So I've gone ahead and I've added just a basic plastic material to this sphere, with a little bit of roughness, as you can see here. And we'll just work with this for now. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my material graph. And this is how you add geometry nodes within the material graph. So I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit so we can see what's going on. So first thing I want to do is I want to add a geometry node. So if you right click in here, you'll go to this geometry drop down and you'll see fuzz. Fuzz is amazing. I love it. So you'll get this node. You can plug it right in if you want first. That's fine. But before I execute any geometry, I'm going to make some adjustments to this. I've actually written down a few of the settings for myself, just to make this go a little bit quicker, so I'm not adjusting too much. So let me type these in first. 0.8, 0.8. And then 20. And also these segments and max curves, these I believe are going to be covered a little bit more next week. But these are a important setting to look at when using fuzz animation for growth, or any of these other settings. I'm going to switch this to cylinder, and now I'm just going to execute this geometry. So another great tip here is this plastic that I'm using on this base material, you can just bring another connector over and then apply that to your fuzz. I'm going to execute that again. And those settings will be applied to that fuzz. So it's going to take on that same, the same settings as your base material. We'll also look at, emissive fuzz too, maybe, if we want to. So now that we have this kind of built out, we kind of like this look, we want to animate it. So if you right click again in your material graph, you'll see a drop down here for animation. So these are two really awesome nodes to use. We'll look at curve fade first. And what this is going to do, if I double click that and I look under the animation little caret here, I push that, you'll see you'll visualize like how this kind of works here. But it's starting at 0 and going to 100. And that's the length. Think of that as length. So if I plug this into length texture, and what will happen if I open up my animation timeline here, that becomes represented in your in your timeline. So whenever you add this curve fade, you'll see that in your timeline. So I'm just going to scrub this down here. So when I scrub through the timeline, you're not going to see anything happen because that geometry, it's not going to want to, refresh every time you scrub, because that would just be pretty heavy on the machine. So what I'm going to do here is actually just kind of scrub through. I'll show you if I execute that node, you'll see that fuzz is, going through stages of growth here. You'll see that kind of growing. So that's a quick way to like visualize that. But I do want to note before I go any further, a great way that I've always used or done to visualize, I guess, cadence of animations is using our preview animation feature here. So I went into my settings. You can set your samples for your preview. This is a geometry animation, so I want to make sure that that is clicked on to showcase that as it animates. And then once you hit this preview button, this will start to build out what you've created so far. You can see it, starting to grow, and it's rendering at a lower resolution. And what I mentioned before is that this is really helpful for cadence and figuring out, is this the right timing for me? Is this building out the way I'd like it to? So if you can use this as much as you can, do it, because it's going to help. It's going to help the workflow, and it's just going to help you visualize what you're animating. So just wanted to note that. So that's a really great way for that for you to work a little bit quicker. So now that we're in here and we're using this curve node, you can see this graph here, and Will touched on this a little bit Wednesday, and he went over some really great details. But what I want to show you is one of my favorite features in here. There's a few, but number one, these are called handles, and these are going to help you adjust the flow of that movement and growth. So if I pull this handle down, holding Shift, it's going to lock to that bottom bar there. And then I'll grab this top handle, and then kind of get a nice S curve there, right? So if I were to, scrub through, you're not going to see anything, of course, right now. But it's going to grow slowly into a fast grow, and then slow down, ease at the end. So let's just preview that again. You can see it represented up here and down on the timeline. So you'll see like a really fast growth to a slower tail end right there. And we'll preview this in a moment. So if we watch this, it kind of shoots out a little bit quicker. So it's not as a mechanical movement, right? It's not just start and end. So pretty happy with that. However, I also want to note adding keys in here are really powerful. It can do a lot, because in the past, let's say I wanted this animation to grow and then I want it to shoot back. In the past, what I would do is just right-click and actually open up this folder, right-click on that animation, and then do like a mirror type effect on that. But if you are creating anything with the curve editor, you can just right-click, add a key, and you'll notice that extended the length of that animation. So if I can, I can move this key, I can extend the animation a little bit longer. But let's say I just want to snap it back to 0. You could do that, or if you're up here and you're like, hey, you know what? I want this to be at 0 growth. You can just type that into the value as well. But you'll notice there's no handles on these, and a good way to just add those in is to hit these handle enablers or disablers up here. So you can just hit that, and then we'll ease that into the end. I also want to add a handle up top. So then we're just going to ease out of that full growth back into zero growth. So let's just make this a little bit faster as it shoots back. So let's preview that. And keep in mind, you can lower the sample rate of these previews if you need to. Doesn't have to be, you know, at a super high quality for checking speeds and cadence. So just keep that in mind. So you see it shoots right back. So that's a really cool function. And then you're not limited to just doing a few of these. You can keep building, adding keys. And let's say I want that growth to go even further than what I've created, or you know, shoot back even less into that object. So you can really start to build a cool custom, like, you know, movement that becomes your own, really, in this graph. So there's a lot of power here. So I wanted to show you that. So I hope that helps you speed up some of your animations. Now that we've created that curve, and by the way, this little window here snaps back all of your keys into fitting this window. What we can do is, I also want to add another geometry node, or I'm sorry, not a geometry node, an animation node, and we're going to add color fade. And I think someone asked a question about this the other day, and I think we used it a little bit, or no, we didn't. We used color gradient, but today we're going to use color fade. And I want to plug this. This kind of works in the same way as this curve fade. However, it's just looking at color. So if I plug this into my diffuse base plastic, and I double click my curve fade, you're going to see a white value to a black value. And if I scrub through this timeline, I'm going to move this back here so it kind of fills the whole animation here. So if you scrub through here, you'll see a change in that tone. But I don't really want due to white to black. I'm just going to kind of do something a little bit different here. Let's pick like more of a blue tone. So you'll see that changing of color there. You can also add other colors. You can go crazy with this. Let's just, I don't know how this is going to look as far as colors go, but hey, that's fine. So you'll see that these colors are changing. Now, this will also apply to the fuzz, because we've connected this plastic base color to our the plastic texture and material to our fuzz surface. So I'm actually going to shrink this, these animations down a little bit in time because I want this to preview a little bit faster. So you'll start to see that growth and color change, and all of those settings really come into play here. So that's really powerful to use both of these at the same time. And a good example of using, another example to use color fade is great with emissive properties as well. So let's say I add a new material. Let's do an emissive material, and I plug my color fade into my emissive color. And let's drag this into our fuzz surface. And then we're going to preview this. You'll see that fuzz is now illuminated. So if you had this effect within a scene or something where that light can really bounce off, you'll really get that effect coming through. Cool. So I'm sure we'll get some more questions with these nodes and what you can do here. But just for the sake of time, we're going to move on a little bit. But this curve fade and color fade, you can use these for different settings like density textures. If you're using maps, let's say you only want the fuzz to grow out of, you know, certain areas, like Espen's toothbrush or something like that, where it's kind of sectioned off areas where the fuzz is coming out. You can apply that curve fade there as well. So it's very powerful. But I also want to note, if you were to drag this connector onto this little plus sign, you'll see all of these other settings too. So this curve fade applies to any of these. So definitely use this and explore, because I mean, you can achieve pretty much any effect you're looking for. I mean, it's wild. So yeah, I just wanted to show you that. Looking forward to questions on that. Hopefully we can help you with that. So next we're going to move on to the NVIDIA GPU model, which I did supply everybody with. So I'm going to go ahead and open that file up. All right. So what we're going to do here, we're going to look at a little bit more in the curve editor, and then doing some copy and paste animations to create a simple exploded view. I'm not going to go too far into it because you know, there's more parts than we have time for, but I'm going to open up my animation timeline. And if I look into my scene, I broke this model down into a pretty clean tree here. So we have our cooling fans, front housing plate, back housing, screws as well. So I'm actually going to start with my fans, because I want to animate one of these first, and then I'll take those animation properties and apply them to other parts. So let's move to our first fan here, or I'm sorry, our second fan on this model. And what I'm going to do is just right click on that part, and I'm going to go to animation and translation. So Will brought this up the other day. It's by default, it's going to set you to Y. I don't want to translate on the Y-axis. I want to translate on the X-axis. So I have this coordinate legend up here, which is Z. If you hit Z, that'll pop that up. So I'm going to go to X. I'm going to knock this up to, I guess, 50. Let's try that out. Might be the other way. Yep, let's go -50. So now we're starting to see that thing come out a little bit more. I'm going to knock that out towards maybe 75. I think I'm okay with that. So, you know, this is kind of a, you know, mechanical movement. It's not, there's no ease to this. I'm actually going to turn off my motion blur for now. And it's on the global axis. It's looking at global for this at this point. So I want this to ease, and what I'm going to do is just hit the caret, go to time settings, and then under motion ease, you'll see custom. Click that, and your graph will show up here. So I'm going to make some adjustments to this to give it more of a natural movement. So I'm just going to drag these handles out a little bit. I want to move out in my graph here. I want to add another key, what we talked about earlier. Bring this down to my 0 point. Add handles on these because I want these to be flowing as well, nice and smooth movements. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now, if I scrub through timeline, you'll see a lot smoother animation. And it's also snapping back to where it was originally. So there's a lot less steps now, and it keeps your timeline a little bit cleaner if you're just using this curve graph for these animations. So we have a really nice movement here, really flowing movement. And now we're going to use this later. We're going to save this. That this is a movement that, if you copy and paste these curves and apply them to other parts, it'll feel really natural if everything's kind of going together, or it sets a tone for those other animations. So we have this, shooting out, but I also want it to rotate as well. So I'm going to right click on that same fan part, go to animation and rotation. And just a note, you can go down here as well to animation wizard and do it that way. So now we have a rotation, and I'm just going to drag this to the same length as my translation. You'll notice that the rotation doesn't have any kind of free-flowing easing. So you can actually just go into your translation that we created earlier, copy this curve, and then go back to my rotation. I'm going to set this to 360 because I want that to, fully spin. And I'm going to enable custom easing. And then in that graph, just right click and paste that curve that we created earlier. So that's going to be really cool. It just follows the same settings as before. So now it's really flowing nicely. I also want to note, if you have all of these animations that you've put onto a specific part, and let's say there's a few other layers to that animation, a good way to clean up your tree, or I'm sorry, your timeline here, is to right click on those selected items. So if I hold shift and click on both of those items, right click, you can add to folder. So I'm going to call this fan 2 because we were animating fan 2. And now those are grouped together for us. So that'll help clean up your animation timeline a little bit. So if you just hit this plus, you'll see them down there. You can also drag and change the timing of these as well. So that's really helpful. You don't have to select multiple to do that. You'll see that the timing of these animations are moving together. So really helpful there. So I'm just going to do that again, that process to fan 1 over here. I'm going to right click. I'm going to add a translation. Actually, you know what we'll do? Let's make this a little bit quicker. Delete that. I'm going to copy this translation from my fan 2. Apply that to my fan 1, which you can do in here, animation and paste animation. So now they're shooting out together, right? So I'm also going to copy this rotation, apply this to my fan 1. So now they're following the same paths, same movements, same easing. And that's really cool. So now it's all grouped together as well. Take note that if you wanted to, it's always good to relabel, your different parts and animations in here to keep it clean. But, I can make adjustments to the flow of these. Let's say I want one to shoot out first and the other to come out next. So that's helpful as well. So let's also animate these screws. So we're just starting to take these parts and shoot them out at different times maybe, because we want to start to get that exploded view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this fan translation, and I'm going to apply this to my screws. which are right here. Paste that animation. Now you'll see that they're all coming out in the same, to the same depth, basically. If I move that over, you'll see them come out to where, it's all kind of uniform at that point, but I don't really want that to happen. So if I go to my screws translation here, which I'll just change to screws, relabel that for us so we can see that a little bit better. I'm just going to pull these out to maybe 50. So you'll see that that is, set in place there. So it kind of gives that breakup, of the parts a little bit more. Also maybe pull this out a few frames. So you'll start to get that really nice flowing movement. So yeah, so I think that's pretty good for this. I think I got the point across as far as of copying and pasting these animations. There might be some good questions coming in with the curve graph, but we've covered a lot of good stuff in that, but definitely, write down some questions if there's anything you want to ask on that. Next I want to touch on is alembic files. All right, let's go ahead and open that up. So I'm going to close out of here, go to my models, and so if you've downloaded this, great. What we're going to do actually before anything, I'm going to open up KeyShot again because I closed out. I'm going to import this alembic file, and if you hit this in the welcome window, a little import, or you can go down here in the bottom bar here. I'm going to navigate to that alembic file, which is cloth animation, and I'm going to click that and open it. So here's our import window, and you'll notice some settings in here. I'm going to turn off import cameras because I didn't create cameras in Cinema 4D for this, and we don't need to pull those over. So we'll keep that off. In the animation little caret, the drop down here, you want to make sure that deformable meshes are set if you want to bring in an animated alembic file, specifically anything that's simulated like water or cloths or things like that, or some kind of cyclone of material or something like that. But that's really important to remember that. And let's say you don't want to have to remember that every time. You can just say enable quick import, and this will save the settings for those specific file types. So alembic files will follow these same settings every time if you just select this and if you were to just drag an alembic file into your scene. So I'm going to go ahead and import that. A few notes here. Alembic files can get really, really large, and that's because I want to, if you're looking at this scene right now, you'll notice all of these little frames. It kind of looks wild, but that alembic is bringing in basically new geometry for each frame. So be mindful of how many frames you're animating in your whatever software you're using for simulation or things like that, because these can really get large in terms of triangles. So if you look up here, I'm at 23 million already, and this isn't really an in-depth animation either. So, but just keep that in mind. So I'm just scrubbing through this. This is the beauty of it, of alembic, I think, is that I can actually just scrub through my timeline to preview what's going on here. So another thing to note with alembic, it's great to export with UVs. And in this case, I did have UVs, so I can apply real cloth to this really easily. So I'm just going to do that for us while we're here. Let me find real cloth. Here we go. Let's pull over maybe this nice blue texture. And in order to make that UV enabled, I just double click that, go into my materials properties, and under mapping, I'm going to switch that to UV. And you'll see that real cloth texture really show through here. So this is a really, really powerful way to bring in more dynamic animations. And it's just something I do a lot. And you can, and from here, you can just go ahead and start building lighting, and you can even animate this as a whole if you wanted to rotate or translate or fade. That's another good one as well. So let's just do this, for example. We're going to do rotation. I'm just going to drag this to the other end of this. So obviously that's a really weird kind of axis to be rotating, but you get the idea. So really powerful. There we go. That's kind of cool. Yeah, alembic. It's great. Waters, particles, a lot of great stuff. Hopefully I can answer as many questions on that as possible. But there are some things that I probably won't be able to answer with alembic, but we'll see. I think that's it for our session with advanced animation in the time we had. But I hope everybody got to retain some of this and recognize the power of alembic. As I do, it's just a lot of fun to use. Yeah, I guess, Derek, I'll kick it back over to you if you have any questions that came through.
Yeah, we have a bunch of great questions, Ryan. Thank you so much for that. And
Sure.
Reminder for anyone who came kind of a little later, Will also did an Animation Essentials video on Wednesday. So I think the combination of Will's video on Wednesday and Ryan's presentation here can definitely get everyone kind of up and running on animation. One issue is some folks are saying we did not actually provide the file that you were first using. So we'll post that up afterwards. So if people want to kind of jump back in on the YouTube session, follow along with that.
Yep.
The first question, I'll kind of give my answer, Ryan, then you can kind of jump in and provide yours as well.
Yeah.
One user is asking, do they recommend when to kind of animate completely in KeyShot versus using a different product? And the example they're giving is a motion study for SolidWorks. My take would be it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you feel like the motion study in SolidWorks, and you can import motion studies from SolidWorks into KeyShot and animate them. If you're happy with what you're getting out of the motion study in SolidWorks, certainly by all means set it up there, bring in a KeyShot and render. I would say, and similar to sort of, Cinema 4D, I think it depends on what you're trying to do. So there isn't a straight answer. But what are your thoughts on that, Ryan?
I'm not sure what motion study is. What is that?
Basic motion study would be so like sort of showing like how mechanical parts work together. So think of like the pistons in an engine, would actually show. So within SolidWorks there's really great tools for kind of animating how the parts work together.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of like accuracy, as far as like scientifically, if they're moving at certain speeds and that software calculates all of that stuff, you can animate in there. But in terms of KeyShot, I would say KeyShot's really fast to get all of that together. But it's really up to the user as far as the accuracy of it.
Okay. Someone's asking the preview mechanism. Are there restrictions on that? They're saying that they were trying to basically preview an entire sequence, but it was only kind of limiting the first 20 seconds.
Interesting.
Can you talk a bit about that? Do you know if there is a length limit to that?
Well, no, I haven't run into that. There might be a setting where they're setting their workspace too small or too short. just make sure that this workspace is collecting all of the animation frames. So, and to adjust that is with these carrots up here.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there a way to animate a material changing from like a copper to a brass, or basically going from one material to another inside of the animation tools?
That's a great question. We're gonna have to email me that one.
Okay.
Let me work on that with someone, whoever asked that. That's a great question. To my knowledge, no, but the thing with KeyShot is that you can always figure ways to make it work. But let me talk to that person through email.
Okay, great. Can you break animations out of a folder? I'm not 100% sure what they're envisioning there.
Oh, maybe. Well, like, is that for like video maps or out of a folder? What does that mean?
Or I can follow up with the user on that one. Is it possible to animate the speed of the fan rotations as they are being translated?
Yes. Yeah. Sure.
You were showing that. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that case, what I would do is, if this length was set of this animation, you can or the rotation like 360 or something like that. You can shrink this up and have that happen. That animation move quicker. Or if this rotation, I wanted a lot faster rotation, I would just make adjustments to the degrees, and then from there you'll see a lot faster spin at that point. So I think that helps.
Yeah.
Okay.
One person's asking, like in that example, how to basically have multiple materials set up on a garment. So imagine in the case of your blanket, it's almost more like a quilt, and how you would do that. And the answer would be to basically break that into separate parts, right? And then apply each materials to the parts.
Exactly. Yeah.
One user is asking, when they're importing an alembic file, they get flipped normals sometimes, which kind of makes it black. How to fix flip normals?
That's in your modeling software or animation software where you're doing these alembics. Like in Cinema 4D, there's just a setting to flip normals. Basically, I think it's that same verbiage, but that would be done in there. However, and if you're using fuzz or real cloth, there is a setting in these two materials to flip normals.
Are you able to have the individual fuzz particles animate and move as well, or can they only kind of just sort of grow up and down?
Well, that's a great question. You mean like the flyaways?
Yes, I believe that's what they're referring to.
Not with real cloth to my knowledge, but with fuzz, yes. You can animate, and we didn't have enough time today, but you can use video maps, which with like black and white. I did something with, in the intro video, you see this like sphere on the outside that's like moving and pulsating. That's done with video maps, which I created in like After Effects, of just like cells kind of moving, black and white values, and you can apply those to your different settings in your density or length or direction. So yes, you can animate that with fuzz.
One user is asking, they're trying to use Mixamo for mocap, and they're asking about Alembic. If they have to use Alembic. No, you can also bring in FBX files as well. Ryan's showing Alembic, but if Mixamo, which I believe is exporting native FBX, that will work as well inside of KeyShot. One person's asking if you can describe in a little more detail how you created that DeWalt see-through animation in the beginning. Basically, they're kind of asking how you were able to, take film and then kind of overlay the KeyShot element into that.
Yeah, this was kind of a crude example, but this is the only one I had available. I put this in this morning, but what I do is I love KeyShot and After Effects together. So in this particular case, this is like 5 years ago, but what I would do is I'd pull in this footage, maybe take a screenshot. This is really crude the way I'm doing it here, but I would take a screenshot of this angle from the film, and then use that as a backplate in KeyShot, and try to align this motor in that perspective. And what I would do from there is just animate whatever is in the internals, and then export out using transparent, a PNG sequence. And for that reason, once you bring this motor into After Effects, you can track it to your footage that way. But there is no way, like if this were more of a dynamic photo or shot, like video shot, where it's like changing perspective a lot, you might have a little bit more difficulty keeping that in perspective.
Okay, great. One person's asking how to animate a flashing LED light. I'll include a tutorial in there. Will Gibbons actually does a great one that's out there, and we'll actually discuss that in yesterday's session. So if you grab yesterday's session and kind of go in about 4 or 5 minutes in, you can see that. But I will provide a link to that user for that tutorial.
Yeah, that's a good question.
One person's asking to animate the visibility of a part, i.e. to kind of hide a cover and show internal parts. I don't know if you can speak briefly about,
Sure.
Actually, do me a favor and switch back to turning off
right.
the
Sorry
video. But yeah, using, you can use the cutaway material that's inside of KeyShot and animate that. So that's one way you can basically kind of literally cut inside of something and see the internals. I want to show that briefly, Ryan.
Yeah, that's a good example. There's a few ways to do this. So we'll do cutaway first. So I just brought in a cube for this example, and yeah, that's fine, that placement. So what you do is just double click this object, and then you change the material type to cutaway. So that's a great way to apply cutaways. And you can animate cutaways too. So it just kind of flies through this object and shows the internals there. Yeah, really cool.
And then if you want to import a video background into KeyShot, so you imagine someone kind of bringing in like a walk cycle and then having a video background in video, how would you accomplish that?
That's a great question too. What I would do there is I'd create a plane, bring in a plane, or this is probably the better option here. Scale this to whatever the scene will be. Probably make it larger than what you're seeing through your real time. And what I do here is I'd double click that, go into the material graph, and then you would add a new node, and that node would be video map. And video maps are really cool. I wish I could have gone over this today a little bit more, but you import frames or an MP4, and it breaks it down into a PNG sequence for you. And then you could place that onto, I don't have an example to put in here right now, but you place that onto that plane in the background, and it'll play that video for you.
Okay, great. One person's asking on the cutaway you were showing, any advice for kind of how to set up the lighting for the cutaway? So I guess they're kind of imagining that sort of the lighting would sort of kick in after certain parts were cut away to focus the light on them.
Yeah, and that's a good question too. I would use physical lights for that. Build out some panels or just bring these planes in. And when, depending on your, what you're looking for, let's say that cutaway material is going through this sphere and cloth. I would animate that plane to maybe do some translations or however you want to do it that way. But I would use physical lights and animating those physical lights.
Okay, great. And can you talk a bit about animating particles, if people want to do any kind of particle animation?
Yeah, so that would be like, if you have Blender or Cinema 4D or some other software, Maya, wherever you can do that type of animation, you'd have to export that as, you know, a specific file type, which alembic works well for. Like recently I did something with a vortex of, you know, just testing out some stuff, but like a vortex of grass, you know, just spinning around, and those will bring in all of those particles together.
Great. One person's asking, using things like the tune material for animation, like the idea of kind of animating almost a product that would kind of go from sort of the real product, excuse me, to like a blueprint and back to the real product.
That would be really cool. That kind of touches on what a question from before about changing materials, animating materials, but we can dive into that.
Okay. Yeah, we can definitely maybe throw a quick tip together on that one.
Yeah.
So what's the best workflow to animate a cable routing action? So I think they're kind of imagining like a cable sort of growing and getting plugged into something, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that, like, I would do that in cinema with like a spline, animating a spline and having that cable with like some kind of like physics properties such as like gravities or things like that. So that cable kind of free flows and then hits a certain point, or plugs into a specific spot, and then bring that into KeyShot.
Okay, great. One person's asking sort of on the SolidWorks question, sort of, you know, how the interlocking parts, and yeah, KeyShot does not have the concept that SolidWorks would have of the actual part sort of being interlocking and sort of knowing where they are. So if you're animating, for example, gears going together, you would have to basically kind of eyeball that process, which would be different than kind of how a motion study in SolidWorks would work. So yes, it's possible to do it, but you would have to kind of, it would be more of a kind of artistic interpretation than the actual mechanical reality.
Hopefully in the future, something like that comes around. That's something I've always wanted too, is like kind of like collision detection.
Yeah. So we're at the top of the hour here. Thank you again, Ryan. As I said earlier, today's our last session of the day. We'll be back on Monday with 2 more sessions focused on materials advanced, which will go through the, excuse me, the material graph and multi-material and more. And the second session, which will be on real cloth, fuzz, and scan materials. So if you want to learn more about materials, definitely come back and join us on Monday. Reminder, we'll be coming through all next week through Thursday. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday with more great content here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this week. A reminder, as always, some folks have asked, all the sessions are recorded and posted on our agenda page, so you can watch on YouTube. I will take the screen now, Ryan, for our final giveaway here of the week. Again, reminder, thank you to the folks at 3D Off the Page for providing these great giveaways, a 1-week 64 core rental on their KeyShot render farm. Our winner today is Douglas Best with display technology. Excuse me, sorry, apologize for the coughing. Douglas Best with Display Technologies. Douglas, you're the winner. We'll follow with you directly to get your prize. Again, thank you everyone for attending today. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you to Ryan, and we will see you all Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time for our next session.
Thank you, everyone.